Skull and Bones is Ubisoft Singapore's upcoming pirate tactical action MMO scheduled to release on November 8th of this year. It's a game that was first shown in 2018 and was supposed to be launched at around that time until it was delayed and delayed again and again and again, to the point that people, myself included, were starting to wonder if it had been cancelled. However, it resurfaced from the depths of development hell this year, accompanied by rock-solid release date and plenty of gameplay footage acting as preview. And the best that we can say is that what has been shown was not met with much enthusiasm by a certain part of the gaming community. In this video, I will go over the concerns some people are having about this game, and I will also address them with my own counter-argumentation, as I believe that quite a few of those are in fact unjustified. Let's dive into it, shall we? Hi guys, and welcome to the channel. I'm the Eradicator, and as you probably know, I am, for one, very excited about the upcoming Skull and Bones, so yes, this video will be biased, but rest assured, if I happen to be proven wrong, I will be the first one to say so, just like I did with, for example, Elite Dangerous Odyssey. But I gotta say that I'm really having good vibes so far. I have a feeling that it's not gonna be the case. So, as mentioned in the intro, Skull and Bones is a pirate-themed action MMO that's been in development for a long time now, and it is being made by Ubisoft Singapore, the same studio that made Assassin's Creed's Black Flag, the pirate-themed entry of the publisher's Flag franchise. And so, when Skull and Bones was announced, a lot of people were already picturing the game to be an MMO version of the similarly themed Assassin's Creed game, giving players not only the ability to engage in naval warfare, but also explore land on foot, and especially taking part in ship-to-ship battles from the first or the third person with a pistol in one hand and a cutlass on the other, slashing English Marines and rival buccaneers alike. And unfortunately, that latter part, as exciting as it might have seemed, is not going to happen. And it is, from what it looks like, what seems to be triggering the detractors of Skull and Bones the most. And I say the most because there are a couple of other things that we will talk about later as well. So, let's talk about ship-to-ship combat, and especially boarding, and why we won't be able to freely fly, or fight, in this case, to freely fight around as we please as the captain of our ships. Now, I won't tell you that it's not the focus of the game, because of course it would have been awesome to have the ability to do so. The reality is that Skull and Bones is not a solo game. It aims at being an MMO, massively multiplayer online game, played by a diverse player base with diverse machines, so much so that in fact it will be crossplay, allowing PC, Xbox and PlayStation players to sail the seas of the Indian Ocean together. And this comes at the price of some major technical difficulties, the main one potentially being desynchronization due to players having machines that compute at radically different speeds. And then that data itself has to be transferred to the live servers, and again, the internet being what it is, people have different connection speeds and live in different countries, and it is therefore evident that to allow everyone to have a good experience, a couple of judgment calls had to be made by Ubisoft, and that is why combat in Skull and Bones is not going to be exactly the same as in Black Flag. Now, to have an idea of how it would have been difficult for Ubisoft to make such a game, all it takes is to have a look at what Cloud Imperial Games are doing with Star Citizen, a game that does let you freely evolve around its entire game universe and does offer the limitless experience that Skull and Bones detractors were expecting. Well, if you do take a look at it, you will very see that, there are a lot of technical shortcomings here, despite having been in development for 10 years now and benefiting from an ever-growing budget of a whopping $500 million. And even after all that time, they still have not released full persistence for game world objects, although it's expected to finally be coming later this year, or server meshing, which will allow players to seamlessly transfer between instances. And why? That's because it simply is very, very difficult to achieve for massively multiplayer online games featuring this scale of fidelity. One simply does not create an MMO the way a single-player game is created, and the reality is that Ubisoft figured it out, and that probably the cost of creating a Black Flag-like MMO would have been too high for such a niche game that, that could be the reason why cross-play functionality would have maybe given them a better chance of generating a return on interest and eventually a profit. And even with the scaled-down gameplay, I think that based on what I have experienced with Star Citizen, I can only imagine that fixing desynchronization must have been one of the primary explanations for the title's 4-year delay, given how massive of a task it is, even for a game like Skull and Bones. Speaking of Star Citizen, by the way, if you are interested of getting it, by the way, feel free to use my referral code, which will get you 5,000 in-game credits. Also, Star Citizen is the theme of my main channel, so you'll find the link in the description down below if you're interested in checking it out. So, it is now clear that a lot of the outrage regarding Skull and Bones is due to the wrong expectations some people were having for the game. However, I believe that Ubisoft's communication also plays a role in that bad buzz. First, I believe that the publisher has often remained ambiguous about what the game really is. As the makers of Black Flag, they ought to know that the average gamer will associate Skull and Bones with Assassin's Creed's Para chapter and got hyped by imagining Skull and Bones will be its MMO counterpart. My assumption is here in fact reinforced by the fact that none of the trailers actually talk about the title's gameplay, as we are instead talked about generalities, for example, in-game customization or the resolution of the game. All of that is also, of course, rendered via cutscenes, which feels quite out of touch, by the way. I mean, why would they even communicate on the game's 4K resolution? Because even 5 years ago, it was already a thing. In fact, if you really wanted to learn more about gameplay in Skull and Bones, you had to watch videos people made in 2018, or even the most recent ones made by Ubisoft themselves for various events in which they showcase their game. And the least we can say is that the gameplay shown in these events, which I personally find awesome, by the way, I can't wait to try it out for myself, that gameplay is actually a far cry from the Black Flag solo experience. And it's a tough reality check out there for anyone who had pictured what the game could have been like without keeping in mind the realities of the nature of the game itself. That, I think, is really a major factor that I believe added to the overall confusion. Now, I have another point to make regarding communication here, and this is related to how the game was presented at this year's Gamescom by game director Elisabeth Pellen, which, let's just say that was not very well received, and in my opinion is a perfect example that shows the importance of a public figure in regards to how a product is perceived by an audience. In this case, the problem was just ignorance, I think, as the average viewer had no idea about what kind of person she was or what she was bringing to the game. The only thing that people saw here was that first she was a woman, and that then her accent was so bad that people ended up watching just to see how confused YouTube's subtitle generator would get. And I have to admit that I found it a little bit hilarious as well. But that's not the point. The point is that before bringing Mrs. Pellen on stage, they should have properly introduced her so that we could have judged her for what she could bring to the game instead of her linguistic shortcomings. You see, Mrs. Pellen, just like me, and also Yves Guillemot, the founder and CEO of Ubisoft, is Breton, from the country of Brittany. Why is that relevant, you may ask? Well, perhaps that's because piracy was one of our nation's biggest economical activities, and that was actually the fact for centuries. In fact, the first ever female privateer in history, Jeanne de Beaulieu, was Breton herself. Brittany has entire areas that revolve around piracy, the most famous being, of course, the one around my very hometown of Saint-Malo. And some of our pirates, or corsairs as we call them, were even elevated to the ranks of national heroes and have statues and streets named after them all over the country. So, you see, if Ubisoft had communicated about our cultural background and what piracy means to us, how it is a part of our folklore, how it is in our blood, then I think that perhaps people would not have seen this woman here as a joke the way they did, but as someone who could do her best to share her background the best she can because it means something to her and also her boss, the CEO himself, Yves Guillemot. And if you think that I am exaggerating, then please ask yourself, why Skull and Bones wasn't just cancelled? Why did they persist in finishing the game and throwing in all of that money into the development? Why is it that out of all of the game companies out there, Ubisoft, led by a Breton CEO, who makes a realistic, immersive, tactical action pirate MMO? Isn't it obvious that it's the CEO himself who makes shots here? I mean, any other publisher out there would have cancelled this game, but someone at Ubisoft obviously decided it was worth making it, and guess who has such decisional power, right? I believe you have an idea now. I'm pretty sure that it's his pet project. But at least that is my intimate conviction here. A conviction reinforced by all of the public support he has personally given over the past couple of years to the game itself. Now, to finish this video, I want to talk about my own thoughts about this game, which I believe is how most people are going to end up having here, or at least most people who are going to end up playing the game and appreciate it for what it is. As far as I am concerned, I am not an Assassin's Creed player. In fact, I have never played Assassin's Creed. I have seen my brother and my father play Assassin's Creed, and in fact, they love it very much, but I don't. I just find the idea of the game too bizarre to get immersed. However, as you now know, I love pirates, I love naval warfare, I love history, I love authenticity, and I like to have fun. And to me, Skull and Bones checks all of these boxes. I don't need nor I do want to spend time doing everything on foot, because as we can see in Star Citizen, it can get very time consuming and you can very easily spend an hour before finally getting into the action. So I am glad that Skull and Bones is taking a more casual approach to our future pirates' lives. I am also glad that we will not see any ghosts or have any of the Pirate of the Caribbean vibes that we see in the Sea of Thieves, because as much as entertaining Hollywood's take on piracy is, it is often far from the reality, and given the background of the makers of Skull and Bones, I know that this is something that they will want to avoid. What I am looking forward to is taking part of some awesome, fast-paced strategic naval combat with plenty of explosions, screams, and epic maneuvers, bold moves, and then celebrate that at the safe pirate heaven where I'll be able to spend my hard-earned booty the way I see fit, and that's it. So yeah, maybe not having played Black Flag helped me set reasonable expectations, because since I never played it, I cannot imagine how a Black Flag MMO would be, and I think that in the end, Black Flag and Skull and Bones will have a different audience. And sure, you will always have a loud minority of Black Flag players who will remain disgruntled, thinking about how Skull and Bones could have been based on what they had fantasized. But I believe that you will have a majority of players who will just be out there looking for a fun time, and that is why I believe that the game eventually will succeed. Anyway, what are your thoughts on Skull and Bones? Are you also looking forward to playing it? Have you pre-ordered it? Or perhaps you wished it was a Black Flag MMO? Please let me know in the comment section down below. And if you liked this video, also please let me know with a like, and please consider subscribing as well for more gaming content. It has been the Eradicator. I wish you guys a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys later.